My name is Beth Maenpaa, and I am currently a student at Lindenwood University. I am studying studio art with an emphasis in art therapy and a minor in art history. I am expecting to graduate in the spring of 2017, and then I will continue my studies in art therapy. I started my collegiate career studying graphic design, but towards the end of my first years in college, two factors really influenced my decision to change courses and use art as a tool for healing. First, I became closer with my brother, who miraculously survived a rare form of childhood cancer at the age of 4. Learning about his experiences and the therapeutic methods that helped him opened my eyes to the field of art therapy. Secondly, a few years ago, I also went through some unpleasant experiences myself that led me to go through counseling and showed me how art can be helpful as therapy. Because of this, my own artistic work uses a variety of media and is inspired from events in my life and influences from my surroundings that I have an emotional and a psychological connection with. Although art therapists are often artists themselves, I believe their own work is less of a focus, whereas helping others create is more important. With that being said, I believe it is important for those pursuing this field to be familiar in multiple media, which is why I look up to artists such as Pablo Picasso and Michelangelo, who are well known for works in multiple areas. My influences come from all over the place, but with my interest in art history, I am more drawn to artists that are more recognizable. I say this because of artists like Vincent van Gogh or Michelangelo, who we have more insight into their lives. I use Van Gogh and Michelangelo as two examples of artists that have influenced me because they are known for having mental and psychological struggles that show in their artwork. This isn't to say that these artists necessarily used art to heal, but they couldn't help but put what was affecting their lives into their artwork. I enjoy learning more about artists like this and seeing their own personal influences within their art to expand on how I can use my experiences in the art that I create. Stylistically, my influences follow along the lines of the Impressionist style. Artists like Claude Monet, Pierre Renoir, and John Singer Sargent have influenced my style in the form of texture. Although these artists were painters by trade, their influences show in my work of 3-dimension in the same sense. Although generally my work is not connected to each other, it shares textural similarities of rough, choppy, and jagged textures contrasted with smoother textures that are similar to the look of the Impressionist style. Where Impressionism has impacted me in form, Expressionism has done the same for me in content. In this sense, it isn't as much of the artist influencing me as it is the movement. The Expressionist movement was all about expressing emotion from within, rather than expressing the impressions of the external world. In this sense, I think it relates directly to art therapy, as its focus is on self-expression in reaction to personal circumstance. As I mentioned previously, my work isn't always connected in content, but it shares similarities in form. I think it's important for art therapists to be well-versed in multiple media, so I have spent my time as an artist continually learning so that I may be familiar in whatever platform my client wishes to use to express themselves. Although as an artist I prefer to work in ceramics and painting, I have familiarized myself in drawing, sculpture, fibers, stained glass, printmaking, and photography, just to name a few. Although in my career, learning how to help others through the use of art is my main focus, in my own artistic work, my desire to show and process what I've been through, my emotions, and my own surroundings and how they affect me propels me to make art. I show all of these things, like the emotions, in contrast by showing struggle as what it is, rough, jagged, and inconsistent, in contrast with soft and smoother forms to show the good that comes from the struggle and how they work together. My work is extremely personal to me, so I am often hesitant to share the message and the meaning behind my work. But to show how I desire to use art as a healing process, I have 3 examples that depict that. My first example is a subtractive monotype print titled Where I Heal. This is a good example of my experiences consciously influencing my art. This print follows the same themes of contrast and texture, as well as the personal reasons behind creating it, that the rest of my work does as well. The brushwork seen closest to the viewer is choppy and rough, and then continues on to get smoother and more calm as it fades into the distance. The meaning behind this piece shows my interest and my desire to use art in the healing process because of what it represents to me. It represents a safe place, or as the title would have it, a place I would go to find healing and rest from struggle. This piece is like a metaphor to me, and shows the difficulty in starting any healing process. As it is shown in the brushwork, the surroundings are harsh and unwelcoming at first, but the lighter and the smoother surfaces on the dock invite the viewer into more similar, calming, and peaceful surfaces in the distance. Another example is the ceramic piece entitled A Matter of Time that I created for an art therapy exhibition at St. Louis University called Bereavement. This piece deals with the loss and the inevitable loss of my grandparents. My mother's parents are still alive, but as the years go on and their health declines, my family is preparing themselves gradually for their inevitable death. I was never able to meet my father's parents due to the fact that they both died before I was born. But as I've grown older, I've become closer to my mother's parents and cherish the time that I have with them. My living grandparents are represented at the top of this piece, while my deceased grandparents are represented at the bottom. The shape of the piece is in an hourglass shape, representing time. Overall, this piece deals with the inevitable struggle of death and how, like my grandparents that passed before I was born, eventually my living grandparents will pass as they did, and that is something that I'll have to deal with. The connection aesthetically goes back to the same contrast in texture that is common in the rest of my work. The upper section has the smaller, thicker brushstrokes that contrast with the lower section with the smoother and larger strokes. This next piece is less traditional in media, but still has the personal meaning like the rest of my work does. Although it mostly uses already made materials rather than images I've created, the theme of texture still applies throughout parts of the book, but in a less significant way. The more significant aspect of this book is what it represents. I used the idea behind this book, called The Story of Two Lives, to come to terms with the internal struggle I've had throughout my life in college. This book as a whole represents how I must abide by two separate sets of rules in my life as an athlete and an artist, and the struggle between the two. These two parts of me, basketball and art, cannot be one without the other. There are portions of each book spilling over into each other to show that even though these books are separate, they are forced to be merged together and overlap, as it is in my life as well. The artist book ends with a quote by Aristotle, saying, "The aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance." This quote resonates with me and where I want to end up as an art therapist. Like I've shown throughout my influences, aesthetic oeuvre, and the works I've already done, I value art in the sense of using its expressive nature to understand more about oneself, to grow, and ultimately to heal. As I have done this in my own artistic expression, I hope to help others do the same. Thank you.